Okay, so we are now recording. So welcome everyone to our weekly call. I hope you had a fantastic weekend. Um, Let me just pull up my slides, which aren't where they normally are on my wide screen. So give me a second. Also, just rustle them around the screen so I'll be able to see when they come on. Okay. And if I now try and share them, I suppose that would be a good thing as well. Uh, right. Okay, so they should appear on your devices momentarily. Um, so, as you hopefully saw, a slight change of plan this week, just trying to get sort of diaries organised. So we're going to talk about the Internet Governance Forum, just do a preview of that. And I'm hoping, just waiting for a couple of people to come back to me, we can do the Zero Trust DNS panel discussion same time next week, in case you're wondering. So I'll confirm that hopefully at some point through this week. So we'll do the sort of preview of some of the agenda of the IGF, then have a conversation. There's been quite a few things in the news this week, so we'll talk about some of that as well. Lots of events on this week. We'll talk about those. I'll remind you what we've got coming up, and we should have time at the end for anything else that is on anyone's mind. So hopefully that all makes sense. So, firstly, just talk about the IGF forum, which this year is happening mid-year, which is unusual. Normally, the IGF takes place at the end of the year, but it's been brought forward this year to inform discussions in the United Nations about the so-called WSIS plus 20 process. That's the so Information Society. I can't remember what WS stands for, but plus 20 means it's 20 years since that sort of initiative kicked off. So the IGF is 20 years old, and they're every 10 years they do a review as to whether it's the right approach for governance. So that's happening in the second half of the year. So by holding the IGF mid-year, that then can some of the discussions at the IGF will then feed into it. So it's only 6 months after the last annual IGF in Riyadh. This year it's taking place, as you can see on the screen, in Lillestrøm, a sort of just on the outskirts, effectively, of Oslo, in Norway. When I looked on the website just now, there's about 6,200 people registered to attend, so it's a fair size event. So it seems to average around 6,000 each time. The original deadline to register was the 1st of June. They then slipped that back to the 8th of June. I've not seen anything to say whether that's changed again, so it may now be a day too late to register were you to suddenly become interested in doing so, at least to attend in person. And I don't think they typically have any or much in the way of remote access. So it is very much a face-to-face thing. Actually, that's not true. They did use Zoom, thinking about it in the last event. So there probably is remote access, but I'm not familiar with it. Yeah, and it starts on the 23rd of this month, 23rd of June, and runs through to the 27th. So it's a 5-day event, even though Monday is always called day zero. So strictly speaking, it starts on day one, which this year happens to be on the Tuesday. But it's just the peculiarity of that particular event. Okay, before I go into the agenda, let me just change what I'm sharing for a moment. It has a challenging agenda, and I think it's worth just sharing that with you. So if I put on my screen the agenda for the Monday, now you can see part of it. So basically, if I scroll down, there's quite a few parallel sessions, not all of the same length, sort of running through the day, and that's true on the Tuesday, and so on through the week. If I scroll up, you can't see them all at the moment. So as you can see, it's quite a complex agenda, lots of slots, several hundred sessions running through the week. So what I've tried to do for the purposes of this discussion, so by way of an explanation, is to pull out what are some of the more immediately interesting sessions to me. I won't talk through all of them in detail because it will probably take longer than you may be interested, but I will share the slides afterwards, as well as some further information from what else is on the agenda, so you can peruse those at your leisure. And thank you, Peter, in the chat. WSIS World Summit on the Information Society. I forgot the WS bit of that when I mentioned WSIS earlier. So therefore, with that preamble, what I've done using this one as an example is to pull out what seem to me to be some of the more interesting sessions, but it's clearly only a very small sample of the many sessions that are available each day. Some of the ones I've pulled out do overlap, so I won't necessarily be going to all of these, but I'll certainly be going to the majority of these ones rather than anything else on the agenda. But as I say, there's a whole bunch of other stuff happening in parallel with all of these. So, for example, 9 o'clock on Monday, there's a session. So just if I highlight, I don't know if this will show up. Probably not. No, it doesn't. The session title, Day Zero, Truth Under Siege, Tools to Counter Digital Censorship. When I share the slides, obviously you'll see the links are there, which there's quite a, well, it varies by session, but there's usually a page or so of information per session, which I've summarized into one or possibly two sentences on the right-hand column. So as you can see, this one is about strategies against censorship and platform interference, to sort of the second half of the sentence, and it's organised largely, from what I can tell, by people from the Tor project, which will probably give you some understanding of the likely direction of discussion. And I've put similar information against each one. And as I say, I'm not going to go through all of these, but just call out some of them to maybe explain the format of the event rather than to go through them all in detail. So the next two, by way of expanding on that, they're both part of what's labelled the parliamentary track. So parliamentarians are invited mainly, or they emphasise, so in particular, the first 2 days of the IGF, on the assumption that they probably won't get them to attend for the whole week. So they have tailored, there's a tailored track for them, but certainly in past IGFs, there's nothing stopping anyone else from dropping into those sessions as well. And I've had interesting discussion in Kyoto, for example, with a German parliamentarian about the relative merits of hash matching to detect known CSAM. I was quite impressed with his level of technical knowledge versus seeing many UK parliamentarians who probably wouldn't have had this, been able to hold the same conversation, sadly. But anyway, so there's a parliamentary track running over 2 days, covering topics as As you can see in the third column around the societal impact of online mis and disinformation, and then the session immediately after that, going down one row, upholding freedom of expression in the fight against cybercrime. And both of those, as I say, those are running back to back, and there's a room that they're using specifically for the parliamentary track. And then actually overlapping with that session, there's also a digital rights in partnership strategies for impact, which is civil society plus Google, looking at the sort of, as it says, the intersection of online experiences and fundamental rights, including freedom of expression, privacy, and access to information. Should be quite interesting, but unfortunately an overlap between that and the sort of similar-ish session in the parliamentary track. So that gives you a sense of some of the sessions I've got to carry on through day one, and then after lunch there's one about sort of fixing the tech sector's role in conflict, which is looking about literary conflict in the sense of war zones primarily, and how that applies to the tech sector. And it's mainly civil society and academia seem to be the people behind this session. And then the last one that caught my eye on Monday was in the plenary, which is typically, it's a UN event, so it is usually a very large auditoria. I don't know what it's going to be like in Oslo, but certainly in Kyoto it probably had about 2,000 seats or so in the auditorium. So obviously very formal setting there, talking about how the sort of big tech shapes the ecosystems, and maybe the lack of transparency in that impact on human rights. From, for example, AI, etc. So, as you can tell, many of these are very policy orientated, but that's hardly a surprise as the Internet Governance Forum. So, very much policy, contrasting, for example, with the IETF. So that gives you a sense that some of them are workshops, there's some big plenary sessions, there's parliamentary track, and various other formats. I won't go through all of the rest, but I will share these afterwards. I'll maybe call out some just by exception. So bottom of this side, this is on the Tuesday, early afternoon. The last row there, privacy preserving interoperability in the Fediverse. So that's looking at whether sort of decentralized systems can help to preserve privacy in the light of new sort of privacy laws, etc. That's got a mixture of the technical community, civil society, and others. Mallory Nodal, one of the names that many of you that acted in the ITF would probably recognise, who's one of the organisers for that session. And then also on Tuesday, there's an open stage which is used for some sessions, and there's not normally a large sort of technical community sort of representation at the IGF, but interestingly, there's a session, as you can see, the sort of top row, where you've got the IB, the IESG, Internet Society, RIPE, that should say, First.org, ICANN, and others, all on the stage, talking about the sort of intersection between sort of the technical community and technical developments and policy. And I think in the longer version of the description, it's about maybe the lack of involvement of policymakers in the technical community. So this is trying to sort of build a bridge, well, as it says in the title, funny enough, between the two communities. So have a more overt discussion between the technical community and those involved in internet governance. Yeah, that one, as I say, stood out. I'll just see if there are any others, again by exception, that I thought were particularly worth highlighting. I don't think there were many. There's a couple more. So on the Thursday, later in the afternoon, there's a single session that I've spotted that specifically talks about the DNS. safeguarding digital identity, and this has got the mainly technical community representatives plus the potentially but not confirmed when the session description was written, the European Commission, and yeah, just talking about how you can maintain trust during change. There's more, again, with all of these, there's a lot more detail if you click on the links. Organisers of that include the DNS Research Federation, so Emily and Lucian Taylor, who some of you may recall being on this call from time to time. So they're part of the organising team for that one. And then on Friday, you can see the only one I've highlighted, can encryption and safety coexist? This is a follow-up session to one that took place in Riyadh in December, just talking about the balance between privacy and protection of vulnerable groups such as children. With sort of various groups involved in that, including civil society, the private sector and government. And for transparency, I'll be one of the panelists on that, as I was in Riyadh on the sort of late morning on the Thursday. As you can see on there also, there's other sessions, one led first thing on the morning with the UK government, and then later in the morning by the German government, and that's true. There are others with various governments behind the organisation of them as well. So, yeah, quite a mixture of different stakeholder groups pulling sessions together. So mainly policy orientated, but certainly there are some sessions which address the overlap between policy and technical sort of decision making. Which is what I find makes it an interesting event to attend. And as I say, the sheer number of people, sort of 6,500 people there. There are always interesting people to talk to throughout the 5 days of the event. So it should be a busy week as always. Now, I don't know if anyone else on the call is planning to be in Oslo, but let me just pause there rather than talking at you to see. In fact, if I stop sharing my screen for a moment, if that sort of throws up any comments or questions from anyone, and if so, pop them in the chat or just unmute and talk, whichever is easier, if anyone's got any thoughts on that. Not seeing anyone unmuting, so looking like possibly not. As I say, I'll share those slides with all the links plus more detail on what else is on the agenda should you wish to have a look at that. I'll share the sort of the spreadsheet format of the agenda because that's how it's applied, but maybe highlighting each day probably a large number of sessions that caught my eye that again may be of interest to you. Unfortunately, as you'll find out, there aren't sort of links from the spreadsheet through to the detailed content of each session, so you do have to sort of manually look between the agenda spreadsheet and the website, which is a bit time consuming and I think could certainly be improved. But for some reason, I seem to have stuck with that format for some time, which makes it hard work to dig out what's likely to be of interest in the sessions. Anyway, if there are no comments, let me go back to sharing my screen. Okay, which I've done. So that was really just to give you a sense of what's there. So I find it a really interesting event and quite rewarding to attend, albeit it's quite an intensive week. Right, okay, let's move on then to what's happened through the week. As always, most of you on the mailing list so would have had these earlier today, but I just call out some of the more interesting ones if you've not had a chance to look at them yet. And the obvious one to start with, we've talked about the DNS for EU initiative several times. As a reminder, this initiative is part funded by the European Union, at least some of the setup capital costs are part funded by the European Union. It's an open resolver. The winning consortium that's sort of spearheading this project is headed by Whalebone, but with other consortia members. Scenic, I think, is so with the not resolver, and various others. I can't remember them all off the top of my head. In the cyber security space, academia, etc. They've been sort of working on this for, I think, a couple of years now, and they've developed a protective DNS offering, which I think is being taken up by a number of European governments. But they announced over the weekend that the public resolver is now open for use. There's 5 different versions of it, for which you've got sort of protective DNS. So as a minimum, filter malware, but with optional sort of child protection and ad blocking on top of that. But there is a completely unfiltered version as well, and it's available for IPv4 and IPv6. Yeah, I've seen the chat, Peter. I hadn't noticed that, but URL House has been testing it, and it's blocking about 70% of their malware at the moment. But it's a good start. No doubt they wish to improve on that, but that's helpful. And an answer as Michael's question. Yes, I think this is true of all the open resolvers. There's a different IP address depending on whether you want just the protective DNS or if you want it plus sort of child protection, which means it blocks adult content, or if you want ad blocking, or both of those. So yes, I guess you could potentially, a third-party observer could potentially find out which of those you've opted for by looking at the IP address. But that would be true of Cloudflare or Google or whomever. So yeah, that's at least I'm not sure if it's completely launched or if it's in a sort of a beta stage or whatever, because although there was coverage that was available over the weekend, the sort of formal launch statement hadn't come out of Whalebone when I was pulling this together earlier today. Presumably it is out now. I'll try and get one of the team on this call in the next couple of weeks if I can to give an update on where they're at with the project. But in the meantime, obviously you can go to the site and take a look. Other things, as normally I won't go through all of these. There was an interesting piece which I spied, a sort of agent DNS, a so-called root domain naming system for LLM agents. It's an academic paper sort of proposing a new naming system for large language models to, in their words, enable, amongst other things, autonomous multi-agent collaboration. There's an interesting sort of critique of the proposal by an academic, Carsten Stocker, which sort of mainly sort of focus on some concerns about sort of governance of the idea. But yeah, I thought it was an interesting idea, if nothing else. I see in the chat, Peter, that it's available to the stakeholder group for testing, which is good to see. I think you could access it simply by going to the relevant IP addresses, which are the details of which are included in various of the items covering it. So I think it's operational, but
Yeah, it is working. Just their announcement was that, and they said they wanted it to go live this week, I guess. So
yeah.
basically what you just said.
Yeah, I was quite surprised that they sort of trawled the fact it was going live over the weekend, but then simply it wasn't going live till Monday. It's sort of an interesting way of doing it. I thought they would have tried to have a more of a big bang, but perhaps they
I,
wanted more of a soft launch.
they're doing the tech launch thing of like, I guess, trying to create a little bit of buzz, and then they're gonna when announce it when everybody already knows about it. I guess something like that seems.
Yes, I'm sure there's a theory behind it, but anyway. Yeah, so there's that. Again, plenty of other stuff happening. Interesting piece. Infoblocks have launched Blue Helix, an agentic a platform that aims to alleviate manual collection and synthesis pressures. To quote the statement that they made, I thought it was interesting. I mean, they use it, I think, to support some of their activity, which is perfectly fine. The reason it caught my agentic AI was one of the topics that was pretty popular at the RSA conference a couple of months ago. So I was quite intrigued to see that there was a sort of real application of that actually being used in anger. Sorry, just knocking my mouse by accident, being used in anger already, because often stuff that you hear at these conferences is largely slideware. So sort of credit to Infoblocks that they've actually got something sort of in production. Say, I think they're certainly one of the first that with a claim to having something that they're using in anger rather than more theoretical. So that was interesting. So that caught my eye. I haven't highlighted it, but at the bottom of the screen, Peter talked about his experiences at the APAC DNS forum in Hanoi. I think on this call a couple of weeks ago, was it last week or the week before, and since put out a blog post on first.org, given that he went to the forum in his capacity as the first.org's DNS abuse ambassador, and he's doing a fine job spreading the word for DNS abuse, or something like that.
You are never going to get bored of that joke, are you, Andrew?
Sorry.
Technically, as I always say, I'm the DNS abuse policy ambassador. So I only advise people spreading DNS abuse about their policy. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure that actually makes it better.
No.
Anti-DNS abuse might be a better label, but what do I know? And then, yeah, sort of last set of these. I'll just remind you the last couple. If you want to go to the OARC 45 event in Stockholm in early October, the registration has opened today for that, as it has for APNX 60 in early September, which takes place in Da Nang. And you can, for that one, if you're not familiar with APNIC, it's an 8-day event, but there's 5 days of technical workshops and a 3-day conference. So you can do the whole thing, or just the workshops, or just the conference. So you don't have to commit to the 8 days if you don't see value from that. And then I'm not sure there's anything here. A bunch of other things that caught my eye. Yeah, probably the one I mentioned at the bottom there. Interesting piece. It's a YouTube video. It's an academic. I've forgotten off the top of my head who it was. Probably Sam Bent. Looking at the name of the link, it's just highlighting that there's a big security concern with Tor and that there's a well-known, apparently, not well-known to me, but to others, that you can sort of unmask users through BGP attacks. So just for a change, it's not always, as we all know, it's not always the DNS. If it's not the DNS, then you can reliably assume it must be BGP. And in this case, it apparently is. Anyway, it explains more on the video if you're interested. Okay, in terms of sort of deadlines coming up, well, I mentioned, I think if you wanted to go to the IGF, you've just missed the extended registration deadline, but it's worth checking if you suddenly became interested. But it may have closed midnight last night. And similarly, ICANN 83, which is sort of taking place even as we speak, the in-person registration closed again for that yesterday. I think with that you can still register to attend remotely for the various workshops through this week if you wish. And there's other stuff coming up, but not for a couple of weeks on that I've highlighted. But there's a lot of events running this week, as I mentioned earlier. So as you can see, you got Cisco Live, Nanog, ICANN 83, WWDC, all running simultaneously and then competing for your attention and competing with those. There's a webinar, I think, on the 11th, analysing domain trends and threats of 2024, with an assortment of people taking part. And also there's again a webinar on the 12th. I think that was driven by ICANN, but basically postulating why the IGF still is important for the long-term future of the internet. Obviously, timing being deliberate, a couple of weeks out from the start of the IGF event. So a lot of stuff happening this week in particular. So it's a busy week for conferences. In terms of this call, just a reminder, as I said, I'll try and confirm it in the next few days, but I'm trying to see if we can have a sort of a panel discussion on whether zero trust DNS is really the inevitable sort of direction to head in for the DNS, for at least for enterprise cybersecurity, but which potentially we do that next Monday. Monday after, won't have a call because I'll be in Oslo, but we'll sort of pick up with some of the highlights from that the week after that. And you can see we've got various things sort of scheduled now through to, well, late August at least, covering a wide range of topics. And that's, I think, it from me, other than, as always, to thank DNS Award as our long-term sponsors of the call. This support's much appreciated, but let's pause there and I'll stop sharing my screen and see what else people want to talk about. I can see a few comments in the chat. I think Jim, yeah, so you've shared an extra piece on from the ITF on AI agents.
Yeah, this is something that's, as it were, come across the radar. Agentic naming service. It's proposing its sort of own database, if you like, of agents that would register. Its own naming service using PKI, etc. Definitely worth a look. It mentions DNS a lot, but it mentions it in the context of DNS not being suitable for various reasons. So I'd recommend having a look. It doesn't mention things like using the SVCB record for services. just using its own thing. So it does, for instance, mention things in there like some of the challenges, like governance issues around that. So I definitely think it's worth looking at. I assume it will be discussed at IETF 123 in Madrid. So yeah, have a look at that one.
Okay, good spot. I wonder if the authors of that will take a look at the agent DNS sort of proposal or academic paper then, or maybe there's some commonality between the two. Who knows? I'll look at that link afterwards. So thanks.
Yeah, I've not looked at the one that you mentioned yet, but I am sort of partway through looking at this one.
Yeah. Okay, well, good spot. I'll follow that up afterwards. Thank you for that. I see that Peter and Ross have both confirmed that they're involved with the Analyzing Domain Trends and Threats event later this week. We're hosted by, thank you, Domain Tools. Sort of pulled that together, but they have, I think they got... forgotten her name. Renee from Infoblox, I think, is on that. Peter as well.
Renee Burton and from Infoblox, and who's one of the most interesting people on LinkedIn, by the way. If you don't follow her, she posts really interesting stuff. And Raymond Dyson from Serval, who I think also posts, but not so frequently on LinkedIn. But yeah, I think it would be interesting. So and I'll be on it. So definitely sign up for that.
Absolutely. And that's later this week, isn't it? So
yeah,
for anyone that's not at those various events, or if they are, they should probably step out of that.
Yeah. Cancel all your plans.
It should be far more interesting. Fantastic. Thank you for that, Peter. So is there anything from anyone else at the moment that you want to sort of highlight that's sort of caught your eye over the last week? If so, now would be a good time just to chime in. I'm not seeing anyone rush to unmute at the moment. Nor time, but I'll just give you a few seconds. Oh. Okay, well, look, let's sort of finish the call early there then today. I hope that was useful. As I said, I'll share the slides with the links to the various sessions at IGF, which is probably easy to sort of peruse at your leisure, just given the sheer number of sessions that there are. If that throws up any questions, or if you any of the questions about the event, feel free to just reach out to me offline. Happy to have a chat about that. Maybe I'll bump into one or two of you in Oslo. Be good to sort of chat to you there face to face if you are there. But other than that, hope that was a useful session. And as I say, I'll confirm hopefully in the next couple of days if we're going to have that panel discussion on Zero Trust DNS on the call next week. So in the meantime, have a great week, everyone, and look forward to catching up same time next week. See you all then. Bye.
Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you.
Thank you.